Okay, here with another special guest. It's Jack Casey, currently with the Kansas City Blues, a guy that I've actually had the pleasure of sharing the field with for a number of years when I played in college. Still to this day, one of the 4 or 5 best guys I've ever played rugby with or against. And that includes my time playing with the Huns and a little bit with the Gilgronis this year. So high praise coming from me, and I think it's deserved praise for Jack. Jack, how are you these days?
I'm good. I'm back home here in Kansas City, so able to work out even throughout this whole coronavirus situation. So I've been doing well.
And yeah, that's good, man. So you had been living in New York and Chicago before that, and Arkansas before that. You played with University of Arkansas, of course. Then you went to play with the Chicago Lions. One of the main guys on that team. You guys went all the way to the D1 National semifinals. You went to Sevens Nationals 3 years in a row. So you played at a very high level for a men's club. And you and I were chatting recently, and you were saying that your next ambition is kind of that you want to push to the next level and try and go MLR.
Yeah, that's where that's what my goal is right now. I want to try to be the best rugby player I can be, and I think that being able to have the chance to devote my time strictly to rugby would allow me to do that. I've loved rugby since I started playing when I was 13. It's a passion of mine. I've had to work with balancing my career and rugby like most club rugby players across the country have to deal with. And I can probably speak for a lot of guys that rugby is one of the most enjoyable parts of their week, of their day. So, I only get to play a certain amount of time, and I love the chance to be able to devote more time to rugby.
Yeah, you talked about balancing, a career with trying to, take your rugby game to the highest level. And obviously, MLR has only been around now for 3 years or 2.5 years. And when you were graduating from college, there wasn't really the optional pathway straight into MLR like we have now. The collegiate draft, and then just more of an impetus on teams to look for local collegiate talent. So I want to ask you, if there had been an MLR draft was it 2018 when you graduated, would you have taken that opportunity, or would you still pursue your career that they've got going with Accenture?
I think that's a good question. I think that, honestly, looking back on it, I would have loved to gone through the draft process. Yeah. I think that would have been something I would have really enjoyed. It would have been interesting for me, coming from a smaller rugby club in University of Arkansas, not as well known as those Lindenwoods and Lifes of the U1A landscape. But I think that what MLR has done with the whole draft process has allowed these college players to have a pathway that wasn't able to be there. Before you had to have these connections with local clubs. If you weren't from the area, if you weren't from an area with an MLR team, is a lot tougher for those clubs to notice you.
Right.
And even I think now, I saw some players get drafted from smaller colleges that weren't even D1A, and I'm thrilled for those players. I think that's a great.
I think a good example of that was, you played against Danny Gianniscoli at Club 7 National.
He played for Schuylkill, I believe.
Yeah, for Schuylkill River, and he was a Division II player at Loyola, and he got drafted. So I think that speaks to your point about that. Maybe even just 2 or 3 years ago, a D2 or a D1 AA player isn't going to really fast track straight to an MLR franchise, and that's more of an option now. Which kind of brings me to another question, which is, as a guy that you obviously have a pretty cool gig, career wise. You're working as a consultant for Accenture. You're traveling around a lot, um, working a lot of hours per week, and you are still able to play with Chicago Lions, but that's training twice a week. Um, do you feel like there's going to be some sort of, I don't know, like it's going to come to a head with you might have to sacrifice your professional career a little bit to pursue your rugby career, or do you think it's going to be manageable?
Well, I think for me personally, I'm at a point in my career where I feel like I've been able to build up my resume some, where I've had some great experience with my company and have learned a lot during my stint with them, where I want to put rugby first. That's what I'm looking to do. I think for other players that have tried balancing rugby and work, it's sort of everyone's trying to find the right mix for them. So for me, I was able past couple of years to be able to have like that 50-50 mix where I would have to give up some things with rugby for work and then vice versa.
Right.
When I was with the Chicago Lions, actually, I would travel every week to Orlando Monday through Thursday and then come straight from the airport to practice on Thursday.
Yeah.
So I know sadly that's not a unique story, but I think that shows that like you have to sometimes find the balance between that. But I think throughout the past about 8 months, I've been thinking about my rugby career, and my dad always says that you can only play for a certain amount of time. Like you get to a point where you have to put it down, and I want to take full advantage of my opportunity to play.
Right. And you and I had spoken a couple months ago about, I think you said one of the things that intrigued you the most about, trying to play at a higher level was that you could train, 4 to 5 days a week. Whereas even from high school through college to even men's club and for you specifically, playing at one of the top 5 or 10 D1 clubs in the country, even still, you're only practicing twice a week, 4 hours a week plus a game. And so the idea of training 5 days a week is alluring just in a development sense.
Right. And I think even throughout my work experience, like you think about like the facilities that you have to work out in when you're traveling on the road. I'm lifting in a hotel gym on a Tuesday morning by myself instead of working with trainers and working with your team and a lot better facilities than hotel gym.
Right, and minus a strength and conditioning coach and
right. That's huge.
even just without a spotter, like
no kidding. But yeah, having the opportunity to train consistently, like that's the difference between, like that's a huge difference between MLR and the club side, is that you're in a professional environment, and that I think I look at how I was able to perform when traveling every week while playing with Chicago. I was still able to be a key player and even got man of the match during the Midwest Championship game, where like I was only able to practice with the team once a week.
Right. I know, it's like you think about, let's just say you were invested full time into it, like who knows how much better you could have even done, and you did a extremely good job as it was traveling on the road and getting to Chicago 2 days before a game.
Yeah.
And I've even noticed you, like, obviously that takes a toll on your body, and I remember you actually lost some weight there for a little bit, like because of the fact that you can't properly work out all the time. So
right. I would say like between working out and on the road, it's a lot tougher to maintain a diet to keep yourself at physically top shape. Like it makes it a lot more difficult. I was about 13 pounds less than I am now.
Yeah.
Now that I'm working out and eating right. and able to dedicate this time throughout being able to work remotely throughout this whole coronavirus situation.
So kind of moving forward, for you, we're in kind of a weird time, obviously, where no one can really like showcase their skills. Like this, normally we'd be doing sevens right now, and you've been to the last 4 sevens nationals for club.
Yeah.
So like that's generally a pretty good opportunity, at the least, just to showcase kind of your talents against other Major League Rugby and USA Sevens, prospects and current players. So for you and other guys like you that didn't, were a little bit too old to go into the draft and aren't playing right now, but have what it takes to make it into the MLR and be a consistent player. How are you managing kind of, trying to reach out or at least showcase your talents when there's no games right now?
Right. So I think there are a lot of players that are in a similar situation where you're trying to reach out to these clubs and at least make that first contact. I've been working through some of my past coaches at the Lions and been trying to work with coaches and talk to them about what I could bring to the team and the different skill sets I have. I was able to create a resume from my rugby experience and about a 5-minute highlight video to share with these teams. So right now I'm in just communicating with teams, had a couple meetings so far, but it does make it more difficult throughout this coronavirus situation, as you said, where in the past teams would have you come out and work out for them and actually show them what you're capable of.
Right.
So it is an odd limbo situation, but I think for anyone else in this in a similar spot to me, it's all about making sure these coaches know who you are and they're at least familiar. So when the time does come to bring players in, you're at the top of their list.
Right. And then you're not getting that like literally, face-to-face time. I mean, obviously you could digitally go face-to-face, but it's not the same as actually meeting a coach in person, like you said, getting that opportunity to work out for a team. But you do have quite an impressive resume, highlights wise, match footage, and then your playing experience, which I think is pretty unique, given that you didn't go to a big scholarship school, but you've still kind of gotten to that level. So could you kind of just walk us through kind of your progression from when you started playing till now? Because I think your path hits home with a lot of American players because it's very, it's not super out of the ordinary and it's something that a lot of American players can kind of follow along. So,
Right.
why don't you walk us through that?
I'll talk a little bit about my experience. So I started playing rugby when I was 13 here in Kansas City for St. Thomas Aquinas High School, where we were a highly competitive team. We actually did a couple of tours of Ireland for my high school. And I was coached by Tim Klumpers. And then when I was looking at universities, I tried looking at all different programs. Like I went to the Penn State rugby camp, actually. Went to Lindenwood Rugby Camp when I was in high school. And I was looking around all these different universities. I wanted to make sure I had a balance of a good business education because that was the area I was interested in, and good rugby. And a lot of the schools I ended up looking at, it ended up just financially not working out when there was a rugby scholarship. It was still not enough to be able to have me go out of state or across the country. So I had to sort of readjust my approach, and I was looking at local universities where I would be able to afford, and Arkansas came up, and I actually did a visit to Arkansas and met with the club president at the time, Cameron Probst, who was talking to me about how, you can come into a team where you can end up building on it and developing a club that could be yours. And so I went to University of Arkansas, and I was surrounded by a lot of good players that actually came in, yourself included. And we were able to, I was club president my junior and senior year. We actually made the transition from D1 AA, where we had gone to the national semifinals in 15s, to D1A in 15s. And I was club president for 2 years. And I really, really enjoyed my time there. But also while I was at the University of Arkansas my junior year, I did a study abroad where I was able to play rugby. Because I knew I wanted to do a study abroad because I wanted that international experience, but I also wanted a great rugby experience at the same time. And so I reached out to the University of St. Andrews in Scotland and reached out to the coach and saying, hey, I'm interested in coming and play for you guys. And they quickly took me into the fold. And I was actually the starting wing for their top 15 side for that fall semester. And we were the top university 15s team in all Scotland at the time. And that was, I learned a lot during my time there because I was actually coming off of summer sevens with the Kansas City Blues during that time.
Right.
So I was in great shape. And that was the year we actually made it to the national final against Utah. Right. And that was a great team. We had Kenny Scott, who's a Utah player, Dan Moore on that team, another Utah player. And then Walt Elder, who was an Eagle at the time. So that was great experience, was able to learn from that from my local club, and then went to Scotland, took that experience back and brought it to my club, the Arkansas club, my junior year. And then from there, I actually ended up getting an internship in Chicago. So that's how I ended up with the Chicago Lions, where Dave Clancy was my head coach, who's now the director of rugby at UCLA. And I learned a lot out there just from playing with different guys who are now in MLR also, playing with guys like Nick Feeks, JP Eloff. That was a great first experience there.
Yeah.
And great guys there. And then graduated from University of Arkansas, went back to Chicago, played 15s with Chicago, where we made it to the national semifinal against Life after winning the Midwest Championship. And then I ended up playing 2019 sevens with Chicago at nationals. And we ended up getting 5th in the nation. And then I moved to New York for a bit, was going to play there, and then coronavirus hit. So I've been working remote and was able to save some money by moving back to Kansas City for a bit. So I'm back at home with my family. And I'm actually working out with the Kansas City Blues players throughout the summer. And if there's fall season for 15s, I'm planning on playing here.
There's a number of guys that do that I know last year, like Taylor Howden and Michael Baska, just a couple that did 15s in the fall with Kansas City, and then progressed into Major League Rugby in the spring. So I think that's a doable thing and a good springboard, to kind of get yourself ready. As a guy like yourself, you're not the biggest player out there by any means, but neither was Brian O'Driscoll, and having gotten to play with you for four seasons, I can say personally that I've never ever seen a guy beat you with the ball in hand or catching up to you, but size is just not really seemed to be a factor for you. And do you feel like being a undersized guy that plays a lot bigger than you are, do you think it kind of works against you a little bit just when it comes to the eye test, especially when, you can't necessarily show a team right now when not able to play what you can really do?
Right. I think that right now with coronavirus, it's a unique situation where, as we said before, like these teams can't see you actually play. Right. I think that my film will speak volumes for how I play on the field and give coaches insight on who I am as a player. That I'm going to work my butt off for whatever team I'm playing on, and I'm going to give it my all. So I think that's I think through my film will help me pass that eye test.
And even I guess what I wanted to ask was that even coaches can watch film and see, you do play a lot bigger than you are, but what would you say defines, your attitude? Because I think, having played with you a lot, your attitude is one of the things that really lifts you and your teammates around you. Like, how would you define that? If any potential coaches were going to listen to this, to kind of sum up like what you really bring to the team, because you can't always see that. It's kind of an intangible.
Right. When we talk about like intangibles, I think that like we've talked about this before, where it's about that like the competitiveness on the field, where that other person across from you isn't going to beat you. I don't care who it is across from me. I will do everything in my power to beat them.
Right.
And I think that like that's shown in my day-to-day life when I'm in the weight room with people, when I'm just messing around at practice. I want to win. I want to beat the other person across from me. I take it personally. So I think that's one of the things that I will always bring every day in rugby, or even in my business work life. I always want to win.
Yeah. Which is like, they don't say, they say, winning is not everything, but, winning makes everything way better.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. No, you're on the field to win the game.
Right.
That's how I feel. And I'm going to do everything in my power to help whatever team I'm a part of be the best version of that team, put all our players in the best position, and give them the best version of myself.
What would you say is kind of your, how would you categorize, your best assets, as a player, and as a prospect? Because obviously you've played a lot of positions for a lot of high-level teams, so I think that versatility is something that's definitely, I would say, is one of them. But what would you say is kind of some of your best qualities that you could bring to a squad?
Yeah, I definitely think the versatility is a part of it, where I played fly half 13 for Chicago Lions. I played wing for St. Andrews. So I feel like I can really play throughout the back line. But just physically, like I think that my vision is shown throughout any film that you see, like whether it's in the kicking game, attack, defense. I believe I have a great awareness of the field and how to actually capitalize on those opportunities. And I think when it comes to another physical attribute that I think of is about body positioning, because I grew up wrestling. I know most people in America grow up with basketball, but here in the Midwest, wrestling's a little bit more prominent. And I think that background helps me in playing defense, being not the biggest guy out there. I don't care how big the person is across from me. I'm always going to take them down, and it helps in defense and counter rucking. And then also on top of that, I think this isn't talked about enough, is body positioning when you're hitting a gap or trying to make someone miss. Because if you know how to move their body and make it so that they can't get their arm to touch your hip or your leg, then you're going to get by them. I think that when you're hitting a gap, you need to have an understanding of where their body is and how to move their body. And put your.
That's actually really I've never heard that really before. So, that's a really good point. And you're always really good at, like, you do a step, and it's not like a step to like break ankles. It's always like a step to get them off balance, and then just like enough of a stiff arm or a handoff, to get them off balance or to where they can't actually get a hand on you. And then obviously the speed to actually exploit the gap, that's a big part. That you can't really kind of born with that. You can work on it, but
no, the speed makes things a lot easier. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't always say that I was God-given, because even in high school, I was running about, I went from running a 4.9 40 to a 4.5 40 in about a year and a half. So I think that is one of the things that it shows, like on the field, my work rate. I'm always going to work to get better. I'm always going to be on the field. I'm always going to be working, whether it's chasing guys down at nationals or making a tackle, getting up, making the next tackle. I would say I'm a high motor player.
Yeah, which is another thing. Okay, high motor, that's something you really can't teach, or just like, it's like that's just comes from your own mindset, your own heart, which, I guess at the professional level, I was watching soccer the other day. It was Liverpool was playing someone, and the commentator was talking about, he's like, I never say this about players because it's supposed to be a given at the highest level. But he's like, but I do have to say this one guy is hustling his butt off, like all over the field this game. That's almost like, it's almost like a prerequisite at that, if you really want to be at that very highest level. And I'm sure there's been tons of extremely talented guys, and there still are talented guys that might not cut it in the MLR because of not having that high motor and the willingness to give up, which I think almost circles back to just that competitive edge of like that you spoke about earlier. Just like, so what? Yeah, even if it hurts, like, it's about winning, and you put up with that. But yeah, you didn't talk about your speed, which I don't know if you're being Mr. Humble or what, but I think I would like to see you race against, some of the top guys and top wingers in the league, because I got to play with a guy, Roderick Wright. Why did I say Roderick Wright? Roderick Waters. Roderick Wright's a defensive tackle from Texas football. Roderick Waters.
He just re-signed, right?
Yeah, he just re-signed, and he's blazing fast. So, but I played with both of y'all, and I would like to see that race. I think that would be a really interesting one.
I'm up to race anybody at any time.
Yeah.
And
classic.
I'm confident in my speed.
Classic story. I'm gonna tell a story about. We were driving to this was in college. We're driving to a sevens tournament. We were playing West Virginia. We're possibly going to play West Virginia in the tournament. And the year before we had played them in sevens, and the year before that as well. And they had this little blonde guy that was incredibly fast. I don't remember his name. Dude was super fast, burned me around the edge badly one time. And we're driving to Oklahoma for the tournament. And the whole ride there, we're just talking to Jack about how fast this guy is and how he's probably the fastest player that we've ever played against. Knowing that this would probably get under Jack's skin a little bit. And,
you knew me too well.
And it sure did. And Jack was just brewing on this the whole drive to Oklahoma, just hoping that we would get a chance to play West Virginia. And sure enough, we played West Virginia in the championship of this tournament, and first play of the game, I pass Jack the ball, and he makes a break through the line, gets to the sweeper, and you know who's sweeping, this little blonde guy, and it's just straight foot race to the corner, probably 50 yards, and Jack could have maybe tried to juke the guy first, but he said, nope, I'm going to outrun this guy to the corner. And you did. Took him all the way to the corner, and like I don't know, that's just like, you were like that guy across from me, like he's not gonna beat me. I always thought that was a good story to kind of epitomize kind of your attitude, but also your speed, obviously.
Yeah, I take the game personally. I want to win, and I want to beat the guy across from me.
Yeah. So if we get to have an MLR season, which, fingers crossed we do, and you do, get an opportunity to kind of show what you have, is there any particular destination in the league that you would want to go to, or are there any factors that weigh into your decision? or are you pretty open?
As of right now, I'm pretty open with that throughout this whole process. I've been trying to get more familiar with how the teams are set up, what their practice schedule looks like,
Mm-hmm.
um, because I just want to make sure that it's the right fit for me personally. So right now, I'm very open. At the end of the day, I want to try to be a key contributor to the team and hopefully help push the team to win an MLR championship, because I think at the end of the day, that's what everyone's playing for. That's why they're there.
Would you be excited? Would you be more excited about, stepping into a team, like an established team, like just just throwing teams out there like a New Orleans, where they've kind of got a lot of continuity with the coaching and the roster, or would you be more excited about stepping into like a Dallas that's a brand new franchise, just laying the foundations? Like, what is there one that you kind of are more keen on, or equal?
I think right now, like I'd say, it's pretty equal for me, where I just want to be put in a position to succeed, and be able to develop as a player as a whole.
Right.
And I think that there are a lot of different avenues to go about that, whether it's plugging in into an already formed team that already has that structure. I know, like you said, New Orleans specifically, I know New Orleans has great structure, great players on the team that I know personally. Um, and But I think there's something to be said about these unknown commodities when it comes to an LA or
Right.
Dallas, when you don't completely understand all the players that are coming in. I see Dallas is signing some new players from Colorado, but I still think as a whole, as culturally, it's a little unknown. So it's tough to really gauge that.
Right. What would be your favorite city if teams were not like, just which city in the league would you most like to live in?
Most like to live in?
Yeah.
Man,
If you might be retired at this point.
if it's tough to say no to those beach cities out on the West
Yeah.
Coast when you look at LA and San Diego.
Dude, it's no wonder San Diego is always pulling in the top international guys.
Yeah.
Dude, I would love
guys
San
trying
Diego.
going to San Diego is always beautiful. But I won't dismiss any of those teams are in great cities like, New York, Seattle,
Yeah.
like Dallas, Austin, New Orleans. I've traveled a lot through work and personally. I've been to each and every city, Salt Lake City too. And I've enjoyed all of them. Honestly, at the end of the day, I'm focused on the rugby. I just want to play. Yeah. I want to be the best version of myself for those teams. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I was chatting with my brother, and he was saying, like, if he did ever play MLR, like we were kind of asking him, like, which teams would you be interested in playing for? And he's like, honestly, every single city is pretty awesome. The league, the teams are established in. And dude, I read today that, like, further confirmation that there might be a team in Hawaii.
Man.
Talk about beach cities.
If Hawaii team came calling, that would be a real tough one to turn down. That's for sure. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, but no, I mean, just all together, I think the MLR is super exciting. The cities are cool. Like, the fan engagement this year, I thought was a lot better. Just the TV exposure is really cool, and like we said, like, if they'd had the MLR draft maybe 2 years ago, like, totally would have gone all in on it. And I think you might start seeing more American players being like, oh, like, this is a very tangible, real thing. Like, I kind of want to commit to rugby. But at the same time, I think that it's smart to kind of still look at, developing a career outside of rugby, because at this point, it's just not going to pay a lot.
Well, it's like you look at the old basketball NBA, like old school NBA, a lot of those players would be working multiple jobs while being NBA players.
Right.
And I think that the league will end up developing where, you know what, like they're gonna look back on some of these players. Like I look back at Len Dawson on the Chiefs and be like, those were the greats from back then, and league's gonna develop how these other
Right.
professional leagues have developed. And I think that's the overall goal.
Do you feel more comfortable having kind of found your footing outside of rugby before you're going to like put your chips into the sport? Or do you ever wish that you would have just gone for it right out of college?
Well, I think for,
because you're 23.
I'm 23. I think for me personally, I wanted to make sure I had a great opportunity with the company I work for to really build up my resume and help secure financial stability in the long term. So that was a really tough opportunity to turn down.
Right.
So I know other people are in different situations where they might have already secured their financial stability, but I think I think at the end of the day, it helps me be more secure in this decision that I'm making now to go all in on rugby.
I think, yeah. And I think that's good for a lot of players to hear, especially guys that are in college and going to graduate, is that, you can, dip your toes into the, professional landscape outside of rugby and kind of get a stable base to where, even if something didn't work out with rugby, maybe you got injured or you had to move or something,
Right.
you have something to kind of fall back on and to not feel like it's rugby or nothing, which I know can be stressful. And, really awesome. Thank goodness that the MLR this year, paid out all the players' salaries.
Oh, that was great. I'm so happy they did that. That shows like the integrity of the league and
Yeah.
how they view their players.
Yeah, because I played with the Gilgronis this year, and there were a number of players who were like that was their job. And when the pandemic was hitting, there were guys that were like genuinely very nervous about, well, dang, like this is it. This is my source of income. This is my job. I don't have anything right now.
Survive.
Yeah, this is how I'm surviving. This is how I'm supporting the people around me. So, they were nervous about if they were going to get their salaries paid out, and they did, which was sweet, which was fantastic. But just in general, like there are always going to be unforeseen circumstances, that could dictate, whether or not you can really, maintain your longevity in rugby. So it is good. It's good to have that, extra base outside of rugby and to know that, you can kind of pursue different options, because you've got you still got 5, 6, 7 years left of like your prime.
Oh, at least.
Yeah. So it's not like the opportunity is lost because you've taken a couple years to develop your job outside of rugby. And you still gotten great development. Like you said, Dave Clancy is a top level coach from Chicago.
Right. I think there's something to be said about the club rugby helping develop players to make that step to MLR, where it's like I was coached by Dave Clancy. I was coached not UCLA, as I said, but also David Fee, who was a former Eagle, and he's now director of rugby for Indiana. And they've really helped my development. And I think even on the 7 scene, a substantial amount of MLR players are coming back for the 7 season and playing on different teams. Like I know that the Haggis team out of Utah was made up of mainly MLR players. I know the Chicago team, pardon?
Like WAC that won it.
WAC, we played them in the quarterfinals, and they had several MLR players and MLR draftee Tommy Clark.
Yeah.
Uh,
What up, Tommy?
so, pardon?
Said, what up, Tommy?
Yeah, so Tommy. But the seven circuit is still at the elite level of
Right.
USA Rugby for sevens. And then even in the 15s game, I know Life University, who we played in the national semifinals, several of those players, I believe, have signed with Rugby ATL and are out there because that was before Rugby ATL was established as an MLR team.
Right.
So there's still a high level of competition within the club scene. And I think
definitely,
especially for those players out there that feel like they would be on the fringe of MLR team, but could maybe get some more playing time and develop more and grow, because when you're coming out of college, you're 21, 22, and sometimes you need an extra year or two to really develop as a player.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can speak to that because I played with the Huns this year and got to also train with, the AGs. And fortunately, like I did get an opportunity to play a little bit in one of the games against Toronto this year. And, just a year ago, a year ago, I would not have been ready. But having played, against teams like the Austin Blacks and the Dallas Reds, and even playing at club nationals a few years ago, playing against Seattle and stuff, like that's club rugby. And, I would not have been able to even hang with, the top MLR guys if I wasn't already seasoned a little bit playing with, men's level Division I. So yeah, I think you're totally spot on with that. Question for you: in 1 year from today, July, whatever the date is, 6th, July 6th, 2021, what would Jack Casey consider a successful calendar year, rugby-wise?
Okay, rugby-wise, successful calendar year for me would look like I have joined MLR team, and I have developed more as a player and become a significant contributor of MLR championship team. That's success.
Nice, high bar.
Hey, you play to win the game.
Yeah, you play to win championships.
Yeah, so that's that's my goal every year when I play club side, is try to win that national championship, and I don't think that would change no matter what club I'm on, because I want to be a contributor and I want to help our team be the best team out there.
Definitely. Would you consider it a success just getting on the field, or do you like personally, do you want to get on the field, start a game, team of the week? Like, is there any sort of personal goals that you have, not necessarily related to team success, just kind of
right. I think personally, I know that whatever team I join, as I've joined teams in the past, you have to work your way into the fold. So
of course,
I think there will definitely be a learning curve, but I will always do my best to overcome that curve. And I think end of the day, I would want to be a starter on the team. I want to be one of the contributors. And I know that there may be a process into that, but I think end of the day, I can become that player that will be a starter.
I think another, like an example of a guy like that worked his way into the fold is someone that you and I played with for 2 years in college, which Corey Jones.
Yeah.
Corey, went through college and then played. We've talked about this. This is funny. Corey's played, D3 club, D2 club, D1 club, D2 college, D1 AA college, D1A college. Played a little rugby league, club rugby league, club sevens. And then, just did so well in club that finally got a chance to play with the Eagles. And through that, he got an opportunity to play MLR, but he even started off with Austin Huns with me and worked his way into the fold and, just kept working, going through the club level.
Mm-hmm.
And Corey started every single game this year for the Gilgronis,
Yep.
and I think played 80 minutes of every game. So, that's an example of someone that you and I played with for a while, and just kind of cool to see someone like that close go on and start every game. And like that's something I think that's something for you that's more than attainable. If you whatever team you do get a chance with, just kind of work your way up, earn your stripes, and I think it's very doable for you within this next calendar year to get into a starting role. And then obviously we had an old coach, Franz, that would say, like, at that high level, it's like, once you get your spot, like, it is not safe. Like,
Oh yeah, you're fine every day.
It almost drives you to go even harder because it's like, someone else wants it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Corey is a very good example of that because I know he's worked his tail off to get to that position he's in now. And I do think I can do the same wherever I get the opportunity to.
Yeah, definitely. Before we hop off, Jack, do you have any particular shout outs, people you've played with, coaches that you've had, whatnot, that, have helped you along the way?
Man, I would have to say all the coaching staff with Kansas City Blues for welcoming me back into the fold.
Yeah.
Throughout this summer, I really appreciate that. All of my former teammates, the Chicago Lions, and former coaches, I've really appreciated all the times that we had together and all the work that we put in to try to build up a great team. And I think there's a great future within that club because they have a great foundation of players there. And then just Warren Fife and Franz Schimper for helping me throughout my university days at University of Arkansas. They've really helped make that club, I would say, a stalwart of the university scene, at least in the 7 side for sure.
Yeah.
Always competitive there. But yeah, I really have to say, like, a big thanks to all the coaches because that there's a lot of time and effort that they have to put in which is not usually rewarded financially for some of them.
Yeah, right. Which is cool. Which is, I think, is a big part of kind of, we always talk about growing rugby in America. It's like, it's those servants of the game that just do it for the passion. And, Warren Fife and Franz Schimper out of University of Arkansas, a couple of South Africans, do all of that stuff for free. And, just because they love the game, and they're not the only ones. There's hundreds and hundreds of them around the country. And, I think that's something we can all do, try to just give back to the game.
Last but not least, I have to throw out Tim Klumpers because he helped start my rugby career. And he's done a lot within the Kansas City rugby community by starting out the Heartland Youth Rugby Program, which has a couple hundred grade school age players in it every year. I was actually the first class of that. There were 9 of us in that class when I was in 8th grade. So now to build that up to a couple hundred is pretty phenomenal.
Definitely. Yeah, and we need more of that, like, all over the country. Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
Okay. Last question.
Last question. Yep.
In your own words, what is rugby?
Man, if I had to give it one word, it's about the community. If I had to give it one word, because I think that is what separates rugby from most other sports across America. because I'll be in the airport, I'll have like Chicago Lions shirt on, and someone will come up to me and be like, "Oh, I used to play for the Lions," and we'll have a little conversation. And I don't think that doesn't really happen among other sports.
Right.
I think that's super important.
Well, and honestly, I feel like it doesn't even have to be the same team. You just see someone
totally.
shirt.
Yeah, I've had just random conversations with people wearing, like, I wear USA Rugby stuff sometimes, and then it'll end up we have common connections across the country, and it's like their best friend. Like not to get sidetracked, but I play with Neki Tekarangi,
right?
Who was from New Zealand. I played with him on the Kansas City Blues, and then I moved to Chicago. And then at the end of the summer, when I was in Chicago, a guy from New Zealand moved in named Mungo Mason, who's now on the DC MLR team.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, you're from Taranaki?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh, do you know Neki Takarangi?" And he's like, "That was my roommate back in New Zealand." And it's just like, it's
such a small little world, even though it's a big community.
Yeah, and I just think that's super important, because you make lifelong friends, and I know we're all out there battling against each other, but I think the community is a huge factor in that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I do too, and that's, you just put into words, I think, what a lot of us in the rugby community feel, which is definitely something that ties the game together better than other sports, I think. That's about all the time we have, Jack. Thanks so much for hopping on with me. I wish you the best of luck moving forward. I really would love if you could come down to Austin, hopefully get a shot with the Gilgronis. But if not, I just want to see you in the MLR next year. And I know whatever team eventually gives you a chance, they're really getting a diamond in the rough. I think that it just takes, playing with you and having you a part of the team. The teams really realize, your true value and what you bring to a squad. And I have no doubt that you're going to get into a team, make a team, and then, fight your way up onto a starting spot one day. And I just can't wait to see it happen. I hope it's down here in Austin, but if it's not, it's not. Again, Jack Casey, Jack Casey from KC. Thanks for taking the time, man, and tell the family hi for me.
Will do. Thanks, Alex. I really appreciate talking with you today.
All right, man. Take care.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. Bye. Wait, give me some skin.
Some nugs.
All right. Peace.
See ya.